So what made me take the leap to paying $57 for a hard swim bait? Well, there's a couple reasons. One, I've been looking for something gigantic to throw. You know, these Florida fish eat big baits. They eat big forage, and that's how you get the real, like the stand-and-load giants. Those giants like 8, 10, 12 pounds. That's how you get them to bite. The other reason is down in Florida, and it's kind of an untold or an unmentionable, a lot of these bass eat really big gizzard shad. We get gizzard shad that are like almost yay big, and I've caught some fish, some 6, 7 pounders, where they actually have the gizzard shad like stuck in their gullet, and they're eating these giant gizzard shad, and it's definitely a key forage for those trophy class bass. So like I said, I lost one of the biggest fish I've ever had on last weekend with the bull shad. I got me a couple more from Monster today. And one thing that I'm going to do, there's 2 reasons, and this is how you kind of got to be analytical with stuff. There's 2 reasons why I lost that fish. One, even though the bull shad comes with pretty decent hooks on, they're the mustad, the triple grips on there, they're not big enough. They're not big enough for the fish that I want to catch on it. So one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to show you in just a minute, is I'm going to change out these hooks to 1/0 mustad triple grips, the short shanks. I actually landed a 6.5 after I lost that giant, and I think it had everything to do with those hooks. The other thing, and this one I'm going to show you too in just a minute, is what I'm throwing it on. You know, I picked it up kind of randomly, wanted to try it out on a spot that I've had some success on, and I picked it up, put it on a random flipping stick with 25-pound fluorocarbon, and just had at it. And literally 2 casts later, boom, boom, and I got this giant on, and it wasn't the right equipment to be throwing on. I couldn't manage the fish, I couldn't play the fish. I ended up basically ripping the bait out of the thing's mouth because I just wasn't prepared, both from an equipment standpoint as well as a terminal technical standpoint, to handle the fish that are going to bite this thing. So let's jump into how we're going to mod out and what we're going to throw this bull shad on. So the bull shad comes with pretty beefy freaking hooks. I mean, they're not bad hooks. They're pretty good stock hooks. However, I like this side of the hook better. It's a lot bigger. It's got a bigger gap on it. It's a bigger barb, and it's got kind of just a more like triple X kind of feel to the actual steel. It really grabs those fish and holds on. It's what I use on all my spoons when I'm trading out my spoon hooks and that. So that's definitely one thing that I'm going to be trading out. All you got to do is grab a split ring pliers, just like this one, and pop these jokers off. And pop on your bigger hook. Like I said, these are 1/0 mustad triple grips. They're beefy, and they act more like a worm hook than like a regular small like crankbait hook, and that way you can kind of tug on those fish a little bit better, and they do stay pinned a lot more, and I'm not nearly as worried if I like get a fish hooked up on one of these hooks versus one of, say, like a number 2 or a number 1. I mean, those are still pretty big hooks, but I'd rather have them hooked up on here than something a little bit smaller. So maybe you're asking yourself, you know, I already paid $56 or $50 for this bait. You know, that's a pretty high price. Why should I go and change out the hooks? Well, like I said, it's kind of situational. You know, the fish that I've hooked with this, granted, I fished it literally for like a half an hour, hooked one of the biggest fish I've ever had on, and then caught like a 6'9" or a 6'10". You know, the fish that I'm dealing with, they're big, and I need that bigger hook. I almost went through the same process when I started spoon fishing, and I put 2 smaller hooks on those spoons, and I ended up paying the price by losing fish. So it's situational, like where you're fishing, like what kind of bites are you getting. You know, it's just one of those things. Like you talk about, you know, if you're fishing further north, those smaller hooks might be perfect because they're going to give you better hookups. It's a clean kind of smaller hook that slides right through the fish's mouth. But when you got a fish that's like 8-9 pounds, that's just thrashing all over the place and freaking trying to buck on you, like you need something beefy to hold them down. So you really got to take it from a context standpoint, and a lot of fishing is about that. Like, it's context. There isn't one rule that works across the board, so you got to approach it so it fits where you're at, what you're doing, and the kind of fish you're catching. So I got this joker all rigged out. You can see those are much bigger hooks on there. They kind of fit the bait a little bit better, and they're definitely going to land me a Gigantosaurus Rex tomorrow. Now that we got this bull shad all rigged out, got the hooks changed out, let's talk about what we're going to throw it on. Like I said, I made a mistake in the first place in using too heavy of an action of a rod and too heavy a line for the application I was trying to do. You know, in some cases that might be the way to throw it if you're throwing it in shallower water or maybe around heavy cover. What I was actually doing is using it to target some shell bar schools that I had found and trying to get a bigger bite out of them. So what I actually needed was one, kind of the lightest heavy line I could get away with, and that's why I chose 15-pound fluorocarbon like I got right here. Basically, why I'm doing that is I'm trying to sink this bait down to anywhere from 15 to 25 feet of water. You basically need to count the bait down, 1,000, 2, 1,000, count it down to whatever depth you're trying to go to. And then by using that lower diameter line, it also keeps the bait down there as you're reeling it in. So number two, what rod am I throwing it on? Like I said, I started off with too heavy of a rod, a 775 Palo Endurance. They don't make them anymore, but basically it's your heavy flipping stick. It's what I flip a 1 ounce, 1.5 ounce jig with. So I actually went down to the new 775 Max 3D, which has a much softer tip to it. It's got a little more moderate play in the tip. It's a lighter rod, just by a hair. It still gives me the length so I can throw that thing a mile, but it has more play in the tip, which allows me to sort of let that fish eat the bait, suck it in, and I'm not jerking so hard that I'm going to rip that bait out of the fish's mouth. So it'll allow me to play that fish a lot more, and that's what happened with that 6'8", 6'9", is that I hooked up, I felt her kind of like load up on the rod, got a good hook set, a nice just sweeping hook set on her, but then I was also able to control the fish because I had more tip to play with instead of just jerking and having just a super heavy flipping stick kind of feel to it. Because it's almost, to an extent, you could say it's a lot like heavy duty crankbait. You need beef to get the bait out there, land the fish, hook the fish, but you need a bit of tip in order to play the fish because you're still dealing with treble hooks, even if they're gigantic. So I'm all ready to go here. I got my bull shad rigged up. I got a spare extra one I got from Monster because I ended up hanging one, which was kind of heartbreaking, but it was definitely worth it because I got a giant bite on it. One last little tip I'm going to throw in there. Some guys are going to want to put a split ring on that nose right there. You can see it's naked the way I have it tied. I got the bait tied directly. You definitely want to tie these baits directly to your line. You don't want any split ring or any clip on there. Why is that? Well, the action this bait gets has everything to do with that line tie and getting tension on the nose so that the bait actually swims and rolls through the water. If you put that ring on there, it's going to create kind of a different wobble and you're not going to get that sort of gliding smooth action that you're looking for. A couple more little quick tips when you're fishing it. My big bite came on a pause. So when you throw it out there, I'm actually counting it down and sinking it down, and then I'll slow reel it back, and then you put a pause in it, and this bait will actually turn a little. It won't do a figure eight, but what you can do too is you can make a little, just a subtle twitch of the rod tip, which is going to make this thing almost turn back, and it's going to swing back around. So putting that pause in there to kind of keep it at the depth level you want, as well as putting that twitch occasionally in there. Remember, subtlety. This bait is for big fish. Big fish move a little bit slower. Kind of want to slow roll it, subtly twitch it. Don't over action the bait. Don't overwork the bait. Let the bait do the work, because this thing for $57, dude, it should do a lot of work, and it does. It's worth every penny, man. And I don't say that about much stuff when it comes to priciness. This thing is pretty killer. Like I said, I picked up mine from Monster Fishing. Get on there and check them out. It's a quality built bait, and it's not one of those things that you're gonna buy. It's a gimmick, and then it's, you know, gotta sit in your tackle box. It catches fish, man, and it catches fish where other baits don't. So give it a try. This is the Bull Shad, and we'll get back out there tomorrow, and I hope those giants are still swimming around, because I got me the right bait. I'm pretty excited about it. All right, guys, tight lines.